Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we welcome dating coach Mimi Watt to the show to share her story of going from anxious to secure as we explore the world of anxious attachment in dating. Mimi breaks down what attachment theory is, how our attachment styles form, and why understanding your attachment style can be a total game changer in your love life and beyond. If you've ever felt clingy, overly worried about where you stand with someone, or just find yourself caught in dating patterns that leave you feeling anxious, flirty, this episode is for you. Mimi shares powerful strategies to help you heal, grow, and move toward a more secure, centered connection with yourself and in really all of your relationships. So, whether you're brand new to attachment theory or already on your healing journey, stick around because this conversation is about to bring some serious clarity and heart-healing advice your way. Now let's meet Mimi. Let's go, flirties.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, on the show today, Mimi Watt, dating and relationship coach extraordinaire, to tell her story of going from anxiously attached to secure. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited as well. How you doing today?
I am doing so well. Yeah. As we just mentioned before, I'm back in the motherland. I'm back in Australia after being in Bali for 6 months, and it feels so good to be here. It feels like I'm just landed back home. So I'm having a really nice time.
A country, a place. It is on my short list. I want to visit so badly. It'll happen one day. I know it will.
Oh, you absolutely must. Yeah, you must. How are you doing?
I am. It's, you know what? We've had a day. It's been busy, but feeling really good and grateful to have this conversation as it's like setting these up sometimes. You're a day ahead. It's daylight there, and I'm still on my previous day. Technology making it all happen. Yeah, today was one of those days. I'm like, as we're nearing or it's like the start of the year when this is coming out. And so I'm just really thinking about how I want to show up this year, some resolutions, some manifestations. Just, I feel like I'm feeling really called to just show up more authentically this year. And like, what does that look and feel like for me, you know?
Yeah, I love that. It's such a good time to reflect, even though it's like you could look at it like, oh, the days and months are just continuing, but it's a beautiful time to pause and reflect and
definitely,
think about who you want to be as you go forward. I love that. Yeah.
And I'm curious now. So I've gotten to know you some through your content, and I'm going to share at a later point in the conversation the video that introduced me to you about a year ago and has stuck with me ever since. But for the flirties getting to know you for the first time today, how did you get into this work?
So first of all, I love that you call your audience flirties. It's so cute. So I got into this work, specifically into relationship coaching, about 2 years ago. And before that, I was doing life coaching, so sort of more general life coaching and a bit of business coaching. It was a bit of a journey finding my footing of what I really wanted to, talk about, as we all know. And I had been through quite a journey with relationships, which we'll get into, and come a long way. And then when I was getting back into coaching after a bit of a break, I was talking to one of my best friends, and she's also in the coaching world. And she sort of asked me a few questions around, what do you think you're naturally really good at? What do you talk about that your friends see as a strength, but you sort of feel is a natural ability? What is that? And it came to my mind. I was like, I think it's around relationships, and it's around communication and feeling confident and secure in relationships. I think that's been one of the biggest transformations of my life so far. Yeah. And so she said, just give it a go. Just start talking to your community about it and see if it sticks. And I did, and safe to say it stuck. It was it was the first time I truly felt what it means to feel very embodied in something you're talking about. And it just felt like this natural extension of myself and who I am. And so that journey began. Yeah, I think it was about maybe 2 years ago. I started posting content in the relationship realm and then started working with clients maybe 6 months into that. So about 18 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. We have, there's some similarities with my journey into coaching as well, where it was really a conversation with a friend a few years ago when I was in my 9 to 5, just feeling very confused and lost in all of that. Like, what's my next step? What am I going to do? And he just mentioned, like, what about coaching? And for the first time in a long time, I had a really embodied response where it was a hell yes, right? A full body yes. And through it all, I had no idea I would land on flirting. I started doing like health and nutrition and mindset and career, and we got here. But when you like, that word embodied is just ultimately how this is for me too.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah. We're going to be, so I really have this idea to have this be a storytelling episode, taking the flirties through your journey as someone who is anxiously attached and what it means to come into developing more secure connections when you're out there dating and forming relationships. But starting somewhat high level here before we go down into anxious attachment and secure attachment more. What is attachment theory? Like, where does this come from?
So attachment theory describes the way we show up and interact in our relationships. And it can be varied across all types of relationships. Like your attachment style can show up in relationships at work, with friends, in your families, but the main area is in our romantic relationships. So it's a way to understand the different dynamics that we have in relationships, both unhealthy dynamics and then healthy dynamics. So for those of you listening, you may have heard of anxious attachment or an insecure attachment type. And if you fall into that bucket, then typically relationships can be very difficult for you, very unstable, tumultuous, toxic. And then if you have a secure attachment type, it's a whole different story. That's sort of the primary goal, is to become securely attached, where relationships are healthy, functioning, and just more steady, I suppose.
Yeah. And so that's a great grounding into for us as to open this discussion. Like, what is attachment theory as we are going into attachment styles here, really focusing on anxious attachment. If you're online or have just been, on social media, you've probably seen avoidant and anxious as the two types. But really, I think focusing on anxious today, because this was very much my attachment style too for, oh my gosh, the longest time. And it just makes dating very overwhelming, and you're in your head, and it feels like you don't have control over your emotions.
Yeah, totally. So the anxious attachment style really comes, do you want me to just like dive into it?
That's a perfect transition. My next question is going to be like, what are some of the ways an anxious attachment showed up? Like, what does that even look and feel like?
Yeah. So try and describe it in a basic sense. When we are young, we don't necessarily have the best communication tools in terms of verbal communication, right? To tell our parents or the people around us what we need or what we're feeling. But we all have a very felt sense of what we're feeling. So our body knows what we're feeling. We may not just be able to communicate it yet. So for example, if you feel hunger, you know what that feels like in your body. But as a toddler, as a child, you may not be able to say that yet. And so an anxious attachment style will form when you are in an environment growing up where you may not have parents or caregivers who are maybe the most emotionally savvy or emotionally intelligent, and they don't teach you the tools of how to actually communicate your attachment needs or to communicate what it is that you're feeling. And they also may not validate what you're feeling. So as a child, you grow up and you're really sad about something. Instead of your parents being able to, come down and ask you about what you're feeling and attempt to understand it and normalize that feeling for you, they may just like shut you down or, go to your room, like deal with it on your own, or tell you you're being ridiculous, tell you you're being too much.
Yeah.
So your emotional feeling, what you're experiencing, is invalidated. And so that creates a really unstable, insecure feeling in the body. And that dynamic is sort of like imprinted. Like the way I like to talk about an attachment style is sort of like a blueprint that you're given, right? So
Okay.
let's say like if a builder needs to go and build a building and they're given a blueprint, it's like, hey, here's the blueprint, go and build it.
Yeah.
It's not that the builder is dysfunctional. It could be that the blueprint they're given is dysfunctional. It's not right. So when they go to build, it's going to be on an unstable foundation. Eventually it's going to crumble. There's going to be all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
But if we give the builder a different blueprint, then that's the correct one, they're going to be able to build really strong, healthy foundations. The building's going to have longevity and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, is this making sense?
Yes. I'm a very visual type of learner as well. So I have all these visuals. This is helping me honestly understand anxious attachment and how rooted the experience is, how embodied the experience is in a whole new way. So I'm like, yes, hanging on every word.
Good. Okay. So what happens is for people who fall into this anxious attachment, and for those of you who are not sure, like an anxious attachment, the attachment style, so you have anxious at one end, then we have avoidant at the other, and secure in the middle, and it's a sliding scale. So you're not doomed for life. Like if you fall into an anxious attachment, you can become secure. It's a sliding scale.
Yeah.
But if you are in that anxious attachment bucket, and this is the sort of blueprint you learn as a child, so that your emotional experiences are invalidated. You know, they're invalidated. You don't feel seen or heard or understood. Maybe you don't feel safe to actually express what you're feeling because you're used to your parents shutting you down or just not even being available to hear you.
Yeah.
So that's the blueprint you're given. Then as you grow up and go into adulthood, that dynamic in relationships becomes normalized for you. Especially on a bodily level. So our nervous system, that's where it's become stored. And that's the reason why when you're an adult, even though on a conscious level, you think to yourself, I don't want to attract some toxic guy or girl who's going to shut me down and they're an asshole. Of course, I don't want that. So why do I keep attracting them, or why do I keep ending up in these relationships?
Yep.
And it's because your nervous system in this blueprint is the underlying driving force. And so we will always look for a familiar chaos over an unfamiliar peace. So even though logically, consciously, we don't want it, it feels familiar. And we've built sort of defense mechanisms to learn how to control that dynamic in a way. So we just keep seeking it out because that's what we're used to.
Yes.
Yes.
This is so cool. Understanding anxious attachment and your attachment style is really a blueprint, but also like I think, and where we're going to go with this conversation is you get to redraw, right? Sort of revise the blueprint too.
Yeah. You do.
So cool. And this is, I think, I'll share now one of the first video I saw of yours was this one, and it was just, I shared it. It was so good, where you were talking about that experience of being that internal chaos, that nervous system dysregulation, where you're just wanting some comfort, some peace, right? That person or your person to come home at the end of the day and sort of just press their hands on your shoulder.
Oh yeah.
Right? Just like it's going to be okay. And so the information that came from that was ways to self-soothe, right? Ways to calm your nervous system that don't involve, right, someone else, or if you're dating someone else and they're not texting you back or something like that, how can you regulate your own nervous system? And it's just so important.
Yeah. And it really is, it's the crux of healing. It's the crux of going from anxious to secure.
Yeah.
Because, it's this process we call like reparenting. And so what it means is if that was your experience when you were young of not feeling completely safe and secure in your body, in your emotions, then as you grow up and you start to become more conscious and more aware of all of this, then you need to be the one to give yourself that soothing and that you needed as a child but didn't get. Because it's like the lived experience is still real in your body. So your body doesn't know the difference between am I 7 or am I 30? I don't know, but the feeling's the same.
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. That's a really good point. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's about connecting in with that little version of yourself who's still feeling scared, or when you're in a relationship and your partner does something that triggers you,
Yeah.
you need to then step in, imagining you're that parent for that little child inside of you, and
Mm.
validate their emotions and be with them and be present and comfort them and help to ground yourself back to a neutral place so that you can then respond to the situation that's triggering you from a more secure place rather than just react from anxiety.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So good. And I'm going to ask you in just a moment some strategies for reparenting, for regulating the nervous system. And want to ask you now some of the ways, like some of the behaviors, maybe the thoughts that showed up for you with your anxious attachment out there dating.
Yeah. So I guess there were some themes across all of my relationships,
Mm.
right? It was honestly a string of relationships. It was like the same person with a different face, as I always like to call it.
Yeah.
Just the same thing showing up.
Yeah.
And some of those common patterns were I was always number one, I was constantly feeling on edge
Yeah.
in my body. So my body was in that constant fight or flight state.
Yeah.
Like you never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know, is your partner going to be consistent? Are they going to disappear for a few days? Are they going to be angry if I ask for some reassurance, or if I want to see them? Are they going to shut me down? So you're constantly on edge,
Yep.
which then consumes you.
Yeah.
So it becomes this thing where like your relationship is your entire world, and not in a good way. It's because you are so consumed by trying to feel somewhat in control that everything else sort of slips away. So I would isolate myself from friends and family.
Yeah.
I would stop doing the things that I needed to do to take care of myself. So like I would stop exercising, my studies at the time or career, whatever I was doing, that would suffer. Because everything becomes about the relationship. And the other thing that always happened was it was on and off, like hot and cold all the time. So, 1 minute things are great and we're really close and it's intense and hot. And then the next minute, being pushed away, it's cold. I'm left questioning what's wrong. Am I too much? Did I do the wrong thing?
Yep.
So these are sort of the patterns that were showing up. Did you experience that in your relationships?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I recognize now I was definitely someone that was anxiously attached. And for me, a lot of time the experience was also very physical. And so, right, I wouldn't be able to sleep, or I wouldn't be able to eat, and my stomach hurt. And I just was having such an embodied experience with the anxiety. And I'm so glad that you opened the conversation talking about the validation, the reassurance, because it was feeling so out of control with being able to regulate myself, being able to provide some of those core needs for myself. I would always look for them in the other person. Just look to have my feelings validated, right? That I mattered, that I, was a good partner, a good person, that I was showing up in the right ways. But at the same time, like to your point, I was attracting more often than not the person that they were inconsistent, and now I was chasing, or just as an example. And even when an available partner would show up, I also, a big part of it, didn't know how to be with that either. I didn't know how to receive that love back because I was so used to, wait, I have to fight, I have to earn, I have to prove myself, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that sense of chasing and needing to prove yourself and like let them know you're good enough. And it's just mirroring the dynamic as a child. And so the reason we chase so like relentlessly is because when you're a child, you are literally dependent on your parents or caregiver for your sense of connection and belonging and for your survival, which means that no matter how painful it is, if you're not having your needs met from your emotional needs met, you will stick around because like you have to. And so we learn these different behavioral techniques of trying to earn that love and approval because it's like our number one survival need is like I must get love. So I will do whatever it takes to get it. But that's abandoning my own needs, people pleasing, apologizing when it's not even your fault. That's a big one. Like if there's an argument, you will just apologize to appease the other person so you don't get cast away, all that stuff. And so then you just bring that blueprint into your adult relationship. So that's what's going on.
And what do you think is one of the reasons that the anxiously attached person, dater, flirty tends to, right, if they're attracting, is it about the chase for them? Is it just because they're comfortable with that uncomfortable chaos, kind of how they can start to break that pattern and find more available, secure partners?
Yeah. So the reason we tend to chase or attract, so someone with an avoidant attachment style is someone who's typically quite emotionally unavailable. To them, they view intimacy as a bit of a threat. It's like a threat to their independence. So people who are avoidant, they actually do crave connection and intimacy, but their blueprint tells them don't get too close because you can't trust people, you can't rely on people. You need to maintain your independence and autonomy above all else. Yep. So that's someone with an avoidant. And what happens is it's extremely common for the anxious and the avoidant to attract each other, which sounds really
I know,
up.
But we see it. I know the flirties out there listening are like, yep, nodding their head. And that is it when there's a lot of, I think, just kind of chaos. And there's a lot of that like tension and the other T word, toxicity a little bit. Things are black and white, all or nothing, good or bad. There's rarely kind of that middle ground of balance. Yeah. It's this anxious avoidant dynamic.
Yes. And it's just this chase. And the reason they attract each other is because your brain is it's always looking to prove its beliefs to be true or to prove your idea of love and relationships to be true. Yeah. Right. Yep. That's why we unconsciously or subconsciously attract these people, because if with an anxious attachment, you believe that love is hard, I must earn love. Yeah. I must chase. It has to feel intense. There's a lot of tension in my body. That's what I'm used to. So I will find these people to prove my beliefs about love to be true. And then with the avoidant, they again believe that, people are going to come on too emotionally. They're too strong emotionally. They're going to be too much and I need to push them away. So they attract the avoidance because we do come on strong and then they go, see, it is too much. I need to push you away.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Confirming our own internal beliefs, just those beliefs, thoughts manifesting as behaviors, but then keeping us sort of stuck, trapped in this loop and these dynamics of attracting, chasing, dating the same types of partners. And so we're definitely going to give the flirties strategies to break that pattern here in this conversation. But I thought it would be cool now to give them a few dating strategies. So for the flirty that's in this right now, they're really identifying with this conversation. They're like, you know what? I think I'm anxiously attached, or they've done some of the internal work, reflection. They know they are, but they're dating. And how can you manage some of those experiences out there dating without let's start with that part of the question first. Maybe.
Okay. I'll try and just pull me back on track if I rant too much. So I think the very, very first step, the most important piece is creating awareness, right? As we know, because if we don't know what we're doing wrong, how do we know to change it? Yeah. So this is where I start with all of my clients, always recommend is let's stop and get aware of what are you currently doing and what are the types of people that you keep dating, what are they doing that is causing unease in the body, that is causing you to feel anxious. So it's about stopping and reflecting on, okay, what are the patterns I keep repeating? So what are the red flags that people I date always tend to do? What do I do? And how is that contributing to these unhealthy relationships?
Okay.
So taking a bit of a log of what's actually going on. Yeah. And then once you see it on paper, that's when you can sort of get curious and question, where did I learn this? Where is this coming from, right? Why do I continue to enable this type of behavior and these types of relationships? Mm-hmm. And so from there, I mean, I think if you're really in the throes of anxious attachment and it's really deep and your attachment system is on fire, or your nervous system's on fire, then I would probably recommend maybe taking a break from dating for a little while and doing some of this work to work on yourself, because I think it's hard to heal in a triggering environment. But some practical, like tangible tools, if you are in the dating world, is setting some dating boundaries for yourself. So number one, and I know some people have an aversion to this, but is don't put all of your eggs into one basket. Like, you need to date or speak to multiple people at a time, especially if you are anxiously attached, because your attachment system, which is the part of you that helps you to feel safe and in control in dating, if you're anxious, it can be like really hyper vigilant. So you become obsessed and really dialed in on this one person, and you're very sensitive to the minor fluctuations in their behavior. So if you have 2 or 3 people you're speaking to, your awareness is spread, your emotional awareness is spread. So if this person over here is being a bit flaky, they're not really texting you, it's not a huge hit, because you're like, okay, well, I've got these other 2 people I'm talking to. And it really just helps you to slow down the dating process and not get overly attached too quickly. So, and this was a tip that I learned through the book Attached, which I recommend everyone reads, by Amir Levine. It was amazing, changed my life. And so this is actually based in, psychology. They really recommend this. So that is the number one thing first. And then some other things are, if you're someone who tends to, there's people you go on a date and it rolls into like a 48-hour thing. Like, you're just like, oh my God, they're so amazing. You're like obsessed with each other, and you spend 2 days together and you think like they're your life, they're your person.
Absolutely.
You get way too swept up. So I say, have a boundary where the first date is like no more than 2 hours. Right? So it should just be a vibe check. You're just going in to literally say, do I vibe with this person? Like, how do I feel around them? Do we seem to have enough to talk about? Would I want to see them again? That's really what the first date should be. And it can sound a bit unsexy, but these are helpful tools if you are extremely anxiously attached. Another one is having a boundary around the amount of texting and communication in between dates.
Huge.
Right?
Yes.
Because, we can get so carried away with texting 24/7. And, I often say, like, if you look at all of your text messages between this person, would you have actually said all of that to them in real life? Like, when you're completely vulnerable and exposed and you're face to face, would you? Like, maybe not. It's just we have this false sense of security behind the screen. So we get really carried away, and we end up putting this person on a pedestal, and we build this huge relationship in our mind. We think it's amazing, when really it's like you've known this person for a week or 2 weeks. You know, so really setting those boundaries and just keeping that texting to an absolute minimum. And if the other person is wanting to really get ahead of themselves and text a lot, just like kindly putting in that boundary and saying, I love how much you're wanting to get to know each other, but I'd love to keep it to our in-person dates. Like, should we line up the next date?
Absolutely.
Just like having those boundaries to help you slow it down.
Yeah. Really good strategies. Boundaries going to be so important, because it's like, it's normal to experience some of those ebbs and flows with dating, where if like, you were texting every day and then all of a sudden 2 days happened. It's like, notice that, you can get curious about it. You can ask some questions, but for the flirty that's anxiously attached, that just becomes like the end of the world. When you sense that slightest pullback or that slightest shift in energy, now you feel the need to chase, to really like double text, and you're checking on their social media, and oh my God, did their snaps go down, but they're active online. They looked at my message, but they didn't respond. Like, I would drive myself, oh my gosh, into an absolute tailspin. And so I absolutely, like, I get it. We've both been there. And when you're in that, it's just so unbelievably overwhelming, and you start to blame yourself and question yourself. What did I do? What could I have done? You feel this need, or at least I felt this need to fix it, like to apologize, what you talked about earlier, like all these habits the anxiously attached can go into, but bringing in some of those boundaries, bringing some space into this new connection, so valuable. And then focusing, like for me, a big mindset shift I made was to start focusing on the connection. Like, am I connecting or am I attaching? Am I feeling like I need to go to this person that I maybe have had 2 dates with to validate myself, to reassure me that everything's okay? Or do I want to check in, hey, how was your day? Right? I was just thinking about our second date and it was so great. I'm looking forward to the third, right? Am I trying to connect with this person, or do I find myself attaching? And so
Yes,
just
that's such a good
noticing
point.
where my mind is at and what my actual core need is. Of course, wanting, right, validation, reassurance, attention, some love from someone you're having a romantic interest with is all fantastic, all good. We want you to have
Yeah.
those and experience those things. It's just about managing your expectations. I think especially early on when, like, relative to your life, this is someone you've known 2 weeks, right? They just shouldn't have such a central role in how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Like when you notice that any change in their behavior has such a hold or an impact over
Oh,
your emotional
yeah.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like when you might not have heard for them for 8 hours or for a day and you're like depressed, and then you see their name
absolutely.
pop up on your phone and you're up here.
Yep.
You're like elated. Your whole day changes. You're
Yep.
like skipping down the street and, colors look brighter and you're so happy.
Yep.
That's a warning sign. That's what you want to look out for. If you notice that that is happening with you, it's a sign that you are, as you said, like maybe attaching too soon. You're placing too much importance on this person for your emotional experience when you hardly know them. And so one thing I always say to my clients as well is treat dating a little bit like an experiment in these early
Mm-hmm.
stages. And so if you're experimenting, if you're running an experiment,
Yep.
you're using your head, right? You're focusing on the facts of the situation.
Yep.
You're not getting lost in your heart. This is what people do. We get too much in our heart and we get a tiny little bit of information. And then we like to go and project that and create this fantasy relationship
Yeah.
that isn't real. It's like, it's just in your mind. And so I
Yes.
say, if you feel yourself doing that, come back into your head, right? Block the heart space for a little bit and just say, what do I know about this person? Like, what are their values? How do I feel around them?
Yep.
How do they treat me when we're together? How do they treat me when we're not together? Like, are they still present? Is there still consistency, or are they just ghosting? Like, really focus on the facts until you have sort of like sufficient data or evidence to say, okay, I think we're safe with this person. I think that we're compatible. Now I can slowly start to open my heart space a bit more. And now I can get a little bit more vulnerable and lean in a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so good because we like I know you see this in your work. It's the marathon first date, right? Where it just
Yeah.
turns into 2 hours, into 4 hours, into 8 hours, and then you go home and you're telling all your friends and you're following each other on social and like you're
Yeah.
going. I mean, I say Delulu is a Salulu, but only in moderation. We can only handle so much at one time before it just completely overwhelms our senses and we get very much lost in this realm of attachment versus, okay, this was one date. I don't know how they're going to show up for me over time. I don't know anything really about their communication style, perhaps a
Yeah.
lot about their values, their goals, their dreams, right? Do we align on a lot of those big things? And so giving yourself some patience to allow those things to unfold all the while I still want the flirties to feel like, yeah, they can show interest and be authentic. Like these are all really great things that are going to ultimately attract the people into your life across all your relationships that have the availability to be there with you.
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to feel like we have to shut ourselves off like a vault and we
Yeah.
can't show any interest or, be a bit flirty or be a bit like have some emotion and feel like you're a human being at the end of the day. But it's just like, it's sort of like putting on training wheels, on a
Absolutely.
bike when you're a kid. So we're just
Yep.
putting on some training wheels until we feel comfortable and safe to take them off. And we can, I think the biggest key in all of this is building a sense of self-trust.
So big.
Trusting that you can be there for yourself, trusting that you can read the signs and the cues and know when someone is not a good match for you and act on that.
Yeah.
Right. So in the beginning, it's like, let's put these boundaries in place to help support you to build self-trust and confidence. And then over time, we can take those away and you can navigate it more freely because you've got such a solid sense of self-trust in knowing that you will do what is best for you. You know what's right and wrong for you. And like you've got your back.
Yeah. And I think this is where we're going to spend the remainder of the conversation today, taking the flirties through the journey of how they can build just that unwavering self trust with yourself. Because, like, how, yeah, I've really gone from anxiously attached to a more secure place out there dating. And so, yeah, want to give the flirties plenty of strategies there. I think starting with ways to regulate your nervous system. So, when you are feeling overwhelmed, some ways that you can self-soothe and just bring some comfort to yourself.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, in that moment when you're feeling really triggered, I think let's bring it back to that, like that exact moment, because everyone who's anxious in a relationship knows this feeling.
Yeah.
You are triggered as fuck. You are like on edge. You're shaking. You're freaking. Your mind is spiraling, right? In that moment, literally, first of all, comes back to your breath. Okay, because in that state of fight or flight, your body physiologically thinks you're like running from a tiger. Okay, that's how it reads it. It thinks there's a real threat to your body. And so when you're like running from a tiger, you can't really take big, slow, deep breaths, can you? Like your breath is going to be really fast, really shallow. Your heart's going to be racing. So in order to literally tell your body we are safe, there is no threat here, and to ground yourself, it starts with the breath, like really basic, so breathing, putting your hand on your belly, taking slow deep breaths, filling your body with air, and exhaling. That's the first piece. The second piece is really just like connecting in with yourself and tuning in. So one technique, and I did this on a video and it resonated with a lot of people, is literally like a self hug. So for those of you who've never done that, it might feel a bit weird, but it's such a game changer. So literally hand under your arm, left hand on top, and holding yourself, closing your eyes. And I like to like tune in and imagine my younger self, right? So imagine the part of me that is feeling scared right now. Okay. And this is helpful because it separates you from the emotion. So instead of just thinking, I myself as the whole individual, I'm freaking the fuck out. It's like, no, it's this little part of me inside that she's scared or he's scared. So let me connect with them, talk to them, right? So you're being present just like you would with your child.
Yeah.
If they were 5 years old and they were really upset, really dysregulated, what would you do?
Yeah.
You would come down to their level, you would hold their hands, or you would hold them and look into their eyes and just try to understand. And you would just be present and just ask, what's going on? What do you need right now?
Yeah.
And start to just hear yourself a little bit. I think we don't give ourselves enough airtime to just hear what we need. And it might be, you might surprise yourself. Sometimes people will tell me they do this for the first time in their life when they're in their like 30s, 40s, whatever, and they just burst out crying because it's the first time they've actually given themselves some emotional validation and presence. Absolutely. And you realize how powerful that is and that you can give that to yourself. And so in that moment, you might need, you might say like, what is it? What do you need? And you hear this voice, like, I'm just so scared of being abandoned. I'm so scared. And if that's the case, reassure yourself, I'm not going to leave you. I'm right here. I'm right here with you. Everything is okay. Or if they say, I just really need a hug. I just need some comfort. Okay, let me hold you, and just continue to, hold yourself, some like gentle havening. So rubbing up and down the arms and just being present. And really it's about meeting your emotional needs for yourself. Does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, 100%. As like yoga teacher, flirt coach, loves all of this. This is a lot of what I bring into my yoga classes, where I really, I want it's really a practice and experience of being, especially when you're anxiously attached or you're feeling anxiety and now you're checking your phone, or maybe you're opening up the app, re-downloading one, swiping, I'll find somebody else. Your mind is just going a mile a minute, searching for all those answers, trying to pick apart what happened, what went wrong, because you're catastrophizing the whole situation and you're looking outside yourself for that validation, for that reassurance. But as we're starting to, conclude here talking about self-trust, this is one of the biggest ways you will do it, is by being able to regulate your nervous system, heal, acknowledge, appreciate, speak to the parts of yourself, your story, your being that are feeling very vulnerable, really.
Yeah.
And being able to provide that safety, just that comfort for yourself. When you can be
rather than trying to distract or something like that, it can be really uncomfortable. And even if your mind is still racing, a lot of times I feel like I'm doing all of this wrong because I'm still thinking. Of course you are. Like, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
If
okay.
you're,
Yeah.
meditating or you're in Shavasana, if you do yoga and you're thinking, I understand that completely. Me too. Still
Yeah.
breathe, and provide that comfort for yourself that you're exactly where you need to be.
Yeah. I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing. There's no right or wrong way. Like,
Yeah.
and I actually think, it's more intuitive than you probably realize. You may
Yes.
be just out of practice. So it's like, just
Absolutely.
give yourself a chance. And as you said, your first instinct when you are triggered and in this state is probably to reach for distraction. So it's like, oh, let
Absolutely.
me just binge Netflix,
Yes.
or oh, let me just scroll social media, or
100%.
just get out or go talk to a friend or be out of the house. But
Yeah.
when you're doing that, the emotion doesn't go away. You're just temporarily numbing it and pushing it further and further down in your body. So it's like you can avoid it now, but it's going to pop up later and it's probably going to be even worse. Or
Yep.
you can just take 5 to 10 minutes and be present with it. And when you're present with it and you give yourself validation, it's naturally going to bring that emotional charge down.
Yep.
And you're going to feel so much better. And it's, as you said, this is about reclaiming your power. It's
100%.
about pulling your power back and saying,
Yes.
I have the ability to take care of myself and to self-soothe.
That's such a big part of what these practices are. And as you were talking about like dating being an experiment, like you get to play an experiment with all of this as well. So is it something maybe more of a moving type meditation where you go out, you need to go for a walk, but you put in some really cool music or a podcast or something like that, but then just not seeing the world through other people's eyes, just really coming into yourself, into your being. What do I see? What do I notice? What do I witness? What am I feeling? And just being able to be with yourself is a huge part of how we will heal from anxious to secure.
Actually, I was just talking about this yesterday with a client, and I think it's important. So people always say, like, how do I build more confidence? Like, how do I build more confidence in myself in dating? And your confidence is built through competence. So, and this also comes in with building self-trust. So you can practice this in your dating life now. So it's about following through on the things you say you're going to do. Okay. So let's say you say, okay, I'm going on this new date and I am setting the intention that I'm going to go on this date for a maximum of 2 hours. You go on the date, you leave after 2 hours. You have just created a little bit of self-trust. You did what you said you were going to do, and you've given yourself evidence that you are competent in doing these things that are setting up a healthy foundation.
Yeah.
Another one is, okay, if I am feeling like, if I start to feel a sense of unease or I'm feeling like someone is not treating me right, I'm going to voice it. And then when that moment comes, even though it's scary and uncomfortable, if you do voice it, boom, that's another bit of self-trust. That's another bit of building that competence. Yeah. So it's about these micro moments, and that is how you build self-trust, and that's how you build confidence. It's not just like a magic pill. It's just these little baby steps that you can keep implementing that, and it happens pretty quickly. Like if you're someone that's never done that, you do that 5 times, you're going to start to feel pretty good about yourself.
Yeah. That's so good. And would you say this is how you start to break the patterns, the behaviors behind an anxious attachment to? It's just building that self-trust, building that confidence through competence, really just proving to yourself that I have this boundary, I have this need, I need to communicate, and I did it.
Yes, definitely. And just teaching yourself that your needs are valid. Like that's really what it comes down to, because before we heal, when we're really anxious, like you said earlier, we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for people. We're looking for people to tell us or to signal to us that, what you feel is valid, or what you need is valid. So the shift happens when we start to do that for ourselves, and we're like, no, I know what I need is valid. I know it's important, and you can't tell me otherwise. You may not be able to meet it, and that's okay, but maybe we're just not the best match. So it's like having that reassurance.
Yeah. That self-reassurance. And so how has dating, or how would you describe the experience of dating with a secure attachment Now, yeah, contrasted with anxious, some of the things that you've noticed.
Yeah. So, well, I can tell you a bit of a story about my first secure relationship. So, anxious, went through a big kind of realization moment, a big growth journey of realizing about my attachment styles and everything. And then I spent about a year being with myself, right? Just healing, learning, growing, enjoying my independence. And then I got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm ready to start dating. And I was like excited. I'm going to start putting these things into practice. And it was amazing. And I met this guy and we got into a relationship. And the thing that surprised me the most was actually how much healing continues to happen when you're in a secure relationship for the first time. I remember this one moment when I was at my house, he was at his house. I was having a difficult afternoon. I was upset about something and I called him and oh no, that's right. There was a little moment we'd had where I was saying goodbye to him from a party at his house and he did something that made me feel funny. And I was really nervous to tell him, but I was like, okay, come on, we're going to practice this. We're going to voice our needs. And I did. And what I'm used to was just being shut down. My norm was like being told that you're just being ridiculous, you're asking for too much, or just my partner getting angry, shutting down the conversation, and then I'm left feeling like a hot mess. That's what I was used to. Yeah. And then in this moment, he just listened to what I had to say, like validated what I had said, and like took accountability for his actions, and then said, what can I do next time to help you feel more secure?
That is hot.
And
yeah.
I think I was dead speechless. Like my jaw hit the floor. I was like, what? What? Like, can you say that again? Because I couldn't believe that this was how a relationship could be. And it was just like, oh my God. So I think, there's a lot to be said of you can only heal so much on your own, but then the healing definitely continues in the relationship. And, that one relationship completely changed my life in how I see relationships, how I see my worth, how I see myself, and actually seeing, you can theorize how you deserve to be treated, but when you experience it for real, it just changes you on a biological, on a chemical level, it changes you. And so I learned for the first time what it was like to be in a secure relationship. And this is the funny thing, like you will notice old patterns wanting to creep back up, and that's okay. It's part of the journey. But I remember things were so calm and predictable that I started to feel this sense of like craving a bit of chaos and craving a bit of drama. And wanting to start fights for no reason because I wanted that hot and cold energy. And I caught myself and I was like, Mimi, do not self-sabotage here. You need to just go and talk to him about it. And so I sat him down. I was like, look, this is going to sound probably really bad, but I'm noticing myself wanting to start fights with you because you're just so emotionally available and so present. And I'm just like, what? And it was funny because he laughed and he said, oh my God, me too. Because like he was used to attracting emotionally unavailable women, me men. And he's like, you're so emotionally available to me. And like, you're everything I've ever wanted. But now that I've got it, I'm like, what? I don't know. Where's the drama? And that was a really important learning moment because it was like, oh, okay, we could laugh about it and it actually brought us closer, right? And then it was an opportunity for us to talk about, okay, like we want to like spice things up or like feel some intensity. Like what can we do that's healthy that will give us the same outcome? Yeah.
So good.
So, I mean, secure dating. It's, and a lot of people will probably feel at first like it's boring or they don't feel that intense spark.
I hear that all the time. I know you do too. Yes.
That's part of it too. And I'm glad you told that story. Is like we were talking a little bit at the start of the conversation about when you go from anxious to secure, part of it is yes, the self-trust and the confidence, but also the belief that you deserve to have that stable, emotionally available partner too. And then when some of those patterns and habits from the past come up, being able to communicate and be with yourself and then be an advocate for yourself and talk through them. And here it was a really cool healing moment within that connection. And that's like, I think just for me personally, where like I've done a lot of healing there within myself, and I date completely different now from a place of secure attachment where I all of a sudden am advocating for my needs, right? I'm setting clear boundaries. I think oftentimes the anxiously attached person feels like every opportunity, every date might be their last. And so they feel like I've got to say yes, right? You're saying yes to everything. You're overcommitting. You're sacrificing your own boundaries. You're chasing. It's like, I don't do that anymore. I just, if I have a need, if I have a boundary, communicating what that is and what that looks like. And then the part that's coming for me that I'm excited about is continuing that healing relationally too. When, right, I'm sure this is going to happen for me when I do have a partner, and there's going to come a moment where it's like, hold up, I should start a fight now, shouldn't I? That thing actually that didn't bother me, I changed my mind. I'm annoyed.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a real journey. And I think also it's important to note for people that when the growth is happening and on this journey, it doesn't mean that you will never feel anxious again.
Right. Of course.
Right. Doesn't mean that you'll have moments of self-doubt or feeling a bit on edge. Like that is totally normal. But the difference is you're now conscious and aware of what that is. And you're able to take a pause, take a breath, be with yourself, get curious, understand, self-soothe, and then move forward, right? So it's just about how you handle when those things come up. That's a big part of the growth journey. It's not a one and done. It's not linear. It'll be a bit of back and forth, a bit of up and down, but over time, that anxious tendencies will become less and less. And also because you'll be dating different sorts of people, like people where you more naturally just feel secure and your nervous system feels safe and soothed, and it becomes normal that you're like, yeah, everything's good because like they do what they say they're going to do, and they are who they are, and the feelings and the effort in the relationship is reciprocal, and it's how it should be.
Such a big difference where you can make more empowered choices and decisions where you're not acting out of emotion. You're not acting out of this need that is coming out of this anxious attachment style, but more so, what do I need really to be with myself, to feel regulated, or like, what is my actual core need? Not what my anxiety, my emotions are telling me I need, but more so feeling my way through this. What do I actually need? So going that one level deeper, this has been an incredible, such a fast conversation. I can't believe we're nearing, at time here. I want to just absolutely send the Flirties your way so they can soak up your content, work with you. If you have any just final thoughts and where you live on the internet.
Yeah, thank you. So you can come find me over on my Instagram, which is just at MimiWatt. Okay. That is where you'll find all of my content, find ways to work with me. And I really, I think my last thoughts are, if there's any area of your life that you should spend time investing in, it is yourself and your relationships. And first and foremost, your relationship with yourself, because it will set the tone for every other relationship. And, take the time, like you can start with free resources, start with content, start with books, read Attached by Emil Levine, definitely start there, and just, give yourself the gift of learning about this stuff and understanding yourself, because it will change your life without a doubt. Mm-hmm.
The longest relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. Might as well make it a good one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Mimi Watt, thank you so much for being on Flirtations today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations. Thank you so much to our guest for this conversation today, Mimi Watt, for sharing her personal story of going from anxious to secure and how you can do the same thing. Yeah, I hope you made some cool new connections today. Your self-awareness shifted perhaps a little bit. You did some healing, a puzzle piece or two fell into place. That's what it's all about. So you can date from a place of confidence and centeredness and empowerment and clarity and have less anxiety and overthinking because, good Lord, don't we all want that? So thank you, Mimi. And thank you to you, the Flirties, for listening, for tuning in, for streaming, wherever you may be in the world. Could not do this without you. I can only listen to my own podcast so many times. Yeah, I need you to listen to it too and share it and let me know what you think about it. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your dating and flirting journeys. Okay, Flirty. That's going to do it for me, Benjamin, the Flirt Coach, and Gay Libra, here at Flirt Headquarters, officially signing off. Flirty, happy flirting to you.